This dog just shouldn't be alive. Effie is potentially the luckiest patient we have ever had at WeCare. We were alerted about Effie's situation by a friend of the charity who used to work for us, and when he called in an absolute flap, we knew something really serious was going on. We knew we had to drop everything and run. He had discovered that one of the dogs from his community had been impaled on an iron bar. There was a house being built in the local area, and we think that Effie had fallen from the unfinished second floor of this building to the ground, where there was an iron bar sticking up from the ground waiting to become a column eventually. And this iron bar was at least 2 meters tall. So essentially she had impaled herself on the top and slid all the way down with it going through her leg. He had actually heard her screaming, heard the commotion. The whole village had rushed out to see what was going on, to try and help. And immediately Lahiru got on the phone to us. We raced there and could not believe she was alive when we got there. This iron pole had essentially impaled straight through her leg and straight through an area where there were some very, very major vessels. So seeing her in that position, wriggling around, trying to get off this rod, we were just desperate at this stage to keep her still because any movement could have been life-ending. So at this stage, Effie had so much adrenaline on board. She was not really aware of what had happened. She was just wriggling to try and get off of this pole, and it was crucial that we stopped that movement. Otherwise, she could have ruptured a blood vessel and bled to death right there in front of us. As we started to work out how we were going to manage this situation, how we were going to get her off of this 2-meter-long metal pole, what we were going to do, she started to go into shock. So her body started to decompensate. She was going pale. Her blood pressure was dropping through the floor. It became a really risky period for us. And at this stage, we had to sedate her because we had to keep her still. So that was terrifying because we were sedating a dog that, one, was going into shock, and two, we didn't actually have a full grasp of what was going on internally at this stage because we knew we were in a danger zone. The rod was going straight through an area where there were a lot of vessels, but we didn't know actually, have we ruptured a vessel? And as soon as we remove this metal rod, she's actually going to bleed out there in front of us in seconds. So very, very scary. Hearts were in our mouths. We have had some crazy scenarios in Sri Lanka. We've had to rescue dogs from 30-foot deep wells. We've had to crawl under saws to get dogs out. We've had to traipse through rice paddies, wade through floods. This was without a doubt the most crazy rescue we've done. And it's not like Casualty or Grey's Anatomy where we're trained in these emergency situations to evacuate animals from buildings. With vets, we learn how to express anal glands, give vaccinations, do the odd dressing. So these kinds of scenarios, yes, we encounter them at WeCare, but it's not something we have been taught to do as vets in the UK. This is very much a think on your feet, use what you can use, and try your absolute best to think of every single aspect that you need to try and manage. So whilst in that situation you are the lead in terms of the rescue, you have to try and think of all the health and safety aspects, keeping your team safe, making sure the animal survives. In Sri Lanka, as with everything, it's a community effort. So before we even had time to think, we had people appearing with handsaws. We had multiple men trying to work out the different angles as to which we could saw this iron rod off of Effie. The whole village came out in force and really made us feel supported. We had a few guys underneath Effie whilst we'd sedated her, trying to saw the iron rod from below. Then we had to saw the iron rod from above. We're at the front end monitoring all of Effie's vitals, and we're just hoping that everything at that back end goes to plan. It was such a team effort. And thank God, and I have no idea how, we managed to remove Effie and about this much of the iron bar in Effie's leg and get her to the hospital in one piece, which was absolutely incredible. First thing we did, she was sedated at this point, is stick her under the x-ray machine, see exactly what the positioning on this thing was. In the UK, we would be really lucky to have CT, potentially MRI, where we could see exactly what was going on inside that leg, but we didn't. And so the next stage was very much a try it and see approach. It could have been disastrous, but we eventually just had to make a decision either way, and it was time to pull that rod out and see what the damage was. This was probably the most crucial point of this whole operation. Any wrong move without even knowing it was a wrong move could have cost Effie her life at this stage. We found that there was coconut rope tied around the rod, and that had become embedded in the wound. So almost we had this pull-push scenario. So as we're pulling, that coconut rope was anchoring more into the muscle belly, and we couldn't actually get it out. So it became quite challenging. At that point, we had to incise down, do a little mini surgery. Once we'd managed to free up the coconut rope and everything could move freely, we started to remove. We were so lucky. At the point at which it popped out, we're all just holding our breath. Are we gonna just have a spurt of blood in the face? No, okay, we can breathe. And then we look down, and what we realise is that, and I don't even know how this is possible to this day, this metal rod has gone between the femoral artery and the femoral vein. Now, normally, they sit right next to each other. There's probably 5 millimetre gap in between them. This pole was about this thick, so probably an inch wide, maybe a little bit less. Somehow, this pole has managed to hit right in the middle of the artery and vein and puncture a hole between the two. The artery and vein have parted like that and just let this iron rod slip all the way through. And I just, like I say, mind is absolutely blown to this day about that. I don't even want to say the phrase a millimetre either side and she would have died. She should have died. It was a sigh of relief all round. We didn't have to operate on a major vessel that is ruptured. The surrounding damage seemed pretty minimal. Of course, there was a lot of soft tissue reaction, but really, we could not believe how lucky we were and how we were getting off quite scot-free. There are so many things that could have gone wrong, and we had an iron rod that missed all of those things and went between the femoral vein and the femoral artery. It is mind-blowing. Once all the pressure was off and we didn't have a dog that was about to bleed out on us, we could relax a little bit, and one of our vets came up with the most epic name, Effie. So essentially it's F-E from the periodic table for iron. So very, very smart little play on that there. Can't take any credit, that was definitely not my brainwave. So following on from that initial day of drama, we did actually have quite a lot of work to do with Effie. The leg did really balloon up as expected. She wasn't able to weight bear on it. She had a horrible infection. Her skin was trying to slough off. We weren't actually sure if after all that we were going to be able to save this leg because it was in such a state of inflammatory response. Some of our vets were really worried that she was not going to be able to walk again, but the old bird came in, that's me. Having dealt with quite a lot of severe trauma in Sri Lanka, I did just think, let's give this a bit of time. You know, there has been so much trauma localized to that area, and I've seen this in so many instances where the body just needs a minute to do what it's supposed to do. And it did, thank goodness. So after a few weeks of Effie not being able to walk, us having to manage some really, really horrible wounds on her legs, she began to walk. She didn't have perfect gait. She definitely still had a limp, but a limp after all of that really is nothing too much to worry about. She was an absolute sweetheart throughout treatment. So when Effie was ready to go home, we chucked her in the tuk-tuk and we drove the kilometre down the road back to the area where she had been found. Lahiri was waiting for us, and first thing he did was plant a massive kiss on her head through the door of the tuk-tuk, which was just so nice to see. She was so welcome home. Everyone came out their houses. They couldn't believe this was the same dog that had been rushed to WeCare with a metal rod sticking out of her only weeks prior. It was such a nice homecoming for her, and we see her all the time with her just being down the road. She's so happy to be back in the community, and as time has gone on, her weight bearing on that leg has become almost perfect. There's barely even a limp anymore, and I'm pretty sure she's staying well away from that building site. It's further testament to the resilience of street dogs. You think that that is an unsurvivable injury. It's testament to her will to survive that she is with us today. If you would like to hear more absolutely bonkers stories like Effie's, then please do make sure that you like and subscribe. It makes such a difference to us at this end, and it means that we can actually continue to help animals like Effie. I hope we never see another animal like Effie. That was crazy. But it does mean that we are able to do that with your support. So thank you very much.